And I change you. Let's see, there you are. Okay. All right. Should be able to show your screen now.
All right, thanks, Lauren. How does that look?
Yep, we see it. It's great.
All right, great. So thanks, Lauren, and thanks everybody else. It's really nice to be here attending this meeting, and I look forward to hearing about some of the other implementations and what other folks are doing. So with that, I'll get going. I know we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm happy to be here and talk a little bit more about our implementation at McMaster University. One second here, just trying to get my notes to work. Okay, so to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Jay Brodeur. I'm Associate Director, Digital Scholarship Services in the McMaster University Library. I've been involved with our Elements implementation from the outset, and I oversee the operation of our Elements installation and the broader initiative that we call McMaster Experts. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to give a little bit of an institutional perspective, talk about how we got to the present moment, and discuss what we're doing now, and we'll like to be doing in the future to integrate elements more into the research information management processes across the institution. So to give you a quick background into McMaster University, it's a relatively large research intensive university located in Hamilton, Ontario. So it's about an hour's drive from Toronto. And McMaster is home to about 30,000 students and has 6 faculties or colleges, as I guess they're called more commonly in the US, as well as a medical school. So from the public's perspective, McMaster Experts is a researcher profile website that shares information about McMaster scholars, their scholarly works, and their expertise, all of which is appropriately branded and integrated with research stories from our campus's Brighter World research initiative. And really providing this public and media-facing resources, one of the stated primary goals when we initiated the project in 2016. So we began with a bit of one-time seed money from the Provost's office, and our goal was to consolidate publication and expertise information for all of McMaster's researchers into a single system and provide a replacement for what was an aging expert database used by our Communications and Public Affairs Office to identify local expertise for media inquiry purposes. So the implementation was a collaboration between the University Library and the Office of the Vice President Research, and we had funding for a project manager to lead the implementation, and everything else was done off the sides of our desks by staff in the library and McMaster's Research and High Performance Computing Support unit. So initially we envisioned implementing Vivo as a standalone solution to solve our problems. And we thought Vivo could serve as the point of information ingest in the public facing application as well. For those of you unfamiliar with Vivo, if anyone in the audience is, it's an open source ontology and linked data application for scholarship that's supported by DuraSpace and Lyrasis. Shortly into the process though, we realized that the burden of harvesting, disambiguating, and attaching publications to individuals was something we couldn't maintain long term. So it was at that point that we began exploring solutions that would help streamline or automate these types of processes. And so very happily, we selected Elements as being that system to provide the functionality. And so it was integrated with a branded Vivo interface and what we now call McMaster Experts. Was established. And at the moment we see these two systems as offering very complementary benefits. So Elements is the faculty member facing full featured RIMS where information is collected, generated, and entered. And Vivo is the public facing read-only system that presents the information from Elements in an appealing interface for humans and as a linked open data for computers. There are retrospective questions that we have. So at the time we were implementing, I believe the discovery module was just coming online. And so if we were to go back, if we were just to do this now, it's an interesting question about which way we would go. And I see a lot of benefits of the discovery module in terms of the simplicity of use. Also, we host our systems locally. And again, that's another proposition. If we had a time machine and can make that decision again, maybe we would go a different route. That's a different conversation for a different presentation probably. So to get back on track, about 2 years ago, we were able to secure ongoing funding for 2 full-time staff to support experts as a production service. And so really what we're aiming to do with experts is to provide a central source of research information. And our goals are to have it current, comprehensive, and accurate, available to all faculty and researchers across McMaster, allow it to be acquired and curated efficiently, and then present it to external audiences and make it reusable by internal groups. And I have a feeling that this is a common goal shared amongst many of you out there. And this is what we're trying to achieve at McMaster. And so as we worked through this implementation, one of the first realizations was just how many systems and units on campus collected some sort of research information from or about faculty members and researchers. And really that left a situation where faculty members are asked to enter information many times, and it's often duplicated information, everything from biographical information to doing their annual reporting of activities for merit purposes, their grant applications, their CVs that are submitted to the funding agencies, other research profiles, et cetera, et cetera. And this wouldn't be a bad thing if there was some central repository of this information where they could enter it one place and it could move across. We didn't have any of that at McMaster. And so unfortunately, faculty members and their research administrators were left entering information in many different places. And I suspect this isn't unique to McMaster, even though we like to talk about how decentralized we are. And so understandably, going to the faculty member with the prospect of entering information in one more system leads to a bit of resistance, to say the least. And so it's important to mention at this point that we really had no sticks, metaphorically. We had to grow carrots. And so at this point, as we were implementing, we were very mindful of, well, what can we do to grow incentives to have individuals want to upkeep their elements information and keep their experts profile current. And so what we envision and what we're working towards is an opportunity to streamline the flow of information where Elements is able to collect a lot of this information, and then ORCID as a tie-in to that as well. And then that information can flow back through to other systems and ultimately streamline things, with the proposition being, if we integrate these systems, it can be reused in many places and deliver benefits to everyone involved. And so considering the environment and challenges, much of we focused on over the last couple of years has been around integrating Elements, particularly with as many internal and external systems as possible. We felt that in order to achieve broad buy-in from faculty members and administrators, we really needed to demonstrate that their lives were going to be easier by using Elements and McMaster experts, or at least that the benefits of using it would greatly outweigh any costs that are associated with it. And to that end, our internal mantra and our main selling point is integrate and reuse, with the added benefit that if you enter it once, it should be updated in many places. And so then we can realize the different benefits that are shown on this slide here. And so to faculty members and researchers, what we're trying to present is a connected ecosystem of research information systems that reuses this data. And so what we've built and what we're continuing to build is sort of this ecosystem where, thanks to the Elements and ORCID integration, that information can flow, or at least most of that information can flow between Elements and ORCID. So we can say to the faculty member, populate information where you want to populate it or where you're most comfortable, and most of it should make it over to the other system, which makes their lives a lot easier. At the same time, other faculty members, they prefer to use other profile systems like Google Scholar, and we're not here to tell them, no, that's not what you should do. And so trying to figure out ways that we can allow relatively easy transfer of information between these systems as well. And I heard a couple whispers of maybe something with a Google Scholar API at some point, and that would be really nice as well. And then by moving to the enterprise solution of Elements a year or so ago, we can now offer the proposition that open access publications in our institution repository, which is called MaxSphere, can now be harvested into Elements, while depositing into MaxSphere is also greatly streamlined as well. And finally, we spent a lot of our time and energy connecting Elements to other profile pages and systems across campus. So our works included integrating with faculty web pages and a couple of faculties. So now the information flows out of Elements and automatically, dynamically populates other web pages that are managed by the faculties. We've integrated information from other authoritative sources on campus and exposed it through Elements and Experts, and that includes course information and research center and institute memberships. We're working to integrate Elements with our Faculty of Engineering's Record of Activities application. So the idea being that the structured information inside of Elements can automatically populate many fields in their annual Record of Activities form, which would be a major benefit to really everybody on campus, to be honest. And building custom visualizations that use and highlight the information that we find in Elements. And I'm not sure, I think I've said this before, I'm not sure we'll ever get to complete synchronization of information, and I really don't think that's critically important. I think the important part is that we're demonstrating how these systems can connect and work together and ultimately make everyone's lives easier. So where we are now is, I mean, we're continuing in this direction of trying to integrate systems more broadly across campus, and then continuously revisiting with our users. So meeting with the Associate Deans of Research of each faculty is something we'll be doing very soon to better understand their needs and figure out how we can use what Elements offers to help with more of their workflow. So that's about my time and what I have. So if we have a couple minutes, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, the questions, just waiting for a couple more to come through. Okay. All right. All right, looks like one came through from Matt. So Matt, I'm gonna unmute you here. 1 second. Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Morning. Thanks for the presentation. It's great to hear such similar stories from McMaster as to what we've got going on at CU Boulder. Wondering what other campus systems have you integrated into your Elements instance, like grants or teaching activities? And can you talk a little bit about the roadblocks or the successes you've faced in integrating with other campus systems?
Yeah, hey Matt, and thanks for your question. So we've integrated with teaching activities. So we pull teaching activity information from our ERP system and represent those. I mean, that comes to the challenge in that we have a medical school as well, and in that faculty, teaching looks very different, and the way to define teaching is very different. And those don't come in a very structured form in the ERP, and they're not in the ERP at all. So we have more work to do there to try to articulate or to represent teaching as it exists for our Faculty of Health Sciences as well. We've been in conversations in integrating grant information into Elements, and that's been one of the roadblocks that we've faced, to be honest, is just having those conversations with the research offices and trying to communicate what the potential value could be for considering the amount of work that it would take to integrate that information. I think there's some reluctance at some times about, you know, what are you doing with this information, and can we assure that it'll be managed appropriately so that, you know, the appropriate piece of information reach the appropriate audiences. And we're still really working through that piece of trying to communicate the value proposition very clearly and assure groups that you know, that we will manage it appropriately, it will be managed appropriately. We're very excited to get the grant information in there because I think, you know, the prospect of connecting publications to grants is really appealing from an analysis perspective. And then finally, just general roadblocks. I mean, as I mentioned before, we don't have a single system that is that we're connected to that is a system that faculty need to complete. So if we were linked in, and maybe once we are linked into Record of Activities solutions, it gets a bit easier to make that value proposition to faculty members to make their information up to date. And so as a result of that, I mean, really what we're doing is a lot in the background of trying to just integrate more and more systems so that eventually at some point we have this overwhelming list of things that will get easier if you just put information into elements. And I think that's the #1 challenge that we face. Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Matt. And then we have a question from Eva. Eva, let me just unmute you here. Sorry. All right, go ahead, Eva. Oh, actually, maybe not. Let's try again. Did that one work? There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Jay, for your presentation. So I'm just curious about all these interactions. We too have different software solutions, different databases that are used across campus, and that's been a real challenge. And what we found in the library repository is that in order for them to have a repository, some of the products they're looking at would also create a faculty profile similar to what we have in Elements. And so my concern has been that I don't want faculty to have to keep up with 2 different profiles, but I have not heard about this kind of integration with different products from different vendors. So can you talk a little bit about whether or not your institutional repository for libraries is a completely different vendor and how you overcame that exchange of data?
So our institutional repository is a DSpace installation, and so that works well. I mean, it's configurable through the repository tools module inside of Elements and the open access solution as well. And so that was the means for us to connect these 2 systems together. And I think one of the benefits is, you know, both of these are managed within the library, so we are able to have conversations using the same vocabulary, perhaps, thinking about how to connect these 2 things together. So we're still working through some of this, to be honest, because we're trying to line up, you know, our institutional repository had different names for different units as well. Yeah. And so we're trying to standardize those pieces as much as possible, but actually connecting the 2 has been, you know, in terms of how integrations go, relatively smooth, and we see a big opportunity for doing a lot more in terms of promoting open access and being able to have some more information about where we stand as a university in meeting our open access requirements from our funders and our government.
And then one other question, if you don't mind, I don't mean to horn in here, but when you are coordinating them with your research office, where they are looking to match research grants with interests, do they use a particular tool for that in your institution to search for grants?
Yeah, good question. I know they had used a specific tool in the past. I'm not sure if they're still using that tool. So right now we're actually doing a demo and a trial of Dimensions as a potential solution for that. Yeah, and I mean, there's lots of benefits for us on the Elements side as well. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that exploration in terms of what they're using.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Eva.
Great, thank you, Eva. I'm gonna do 2 more questions here. I'm gonna do John and Vance. So John, I'm gonna unmute you.
Lauren, while you're unmuting Lauren, hi everyone, Kate Byrne here. Just to add to Jay's answer, with our repository tools integrations, we currently offer integration options, bidirectional integration options for DSpace, ePrints, Figshare for institutions, and Hyrax repositories. And if there's a different repository that you're looking at or you want to have a chat about, just get in touch over our support site and we can give you some information about how all of that works. We have over 80 repository integrations up and running in various parts of the world, so it's a well-worn path for us, and we'd be happy to give you some info on that.
Great, thank you, Kate. Okay, John, go ahead.
Okay, hey Jay, thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering if you could give a really brief, quick overview of how you are populating other profile pages on your campus with the structured data from Elements, and just, you know, how difficult was that to set up?
Hey, John. So we're using the Elements API for this at the moment. We have a very skilled person on our team who was able to sit with the technical folks and the faculty and essentially develop a set of scripts that would pull that information. And I believe what's happening is they're running a poll every night and just pulling differences in terms of publication and profile information. And so they're storing that separately in their own database, and then that's what's used to populate the web pages. We're also looking at another potential solution, which is a project that we're calling McMaster Data Sharing Service. And so it's a collaborative project across a number of units on campus to establish a central clearinghouse of information, essentially. And longer term, I think that's where we want to connect faculties to. And so whether you know, we use a similar database structure to Elements or we use a different database structure, we'll be moving our information into that clearinghouse, which is supported by our central IT, and allowing that to provide that information, because I think that they can scale that infrastructure a lot better than what we can with our Elements instance.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. And then last question from Vance. Let me unmute you, Vance. All right. That should have worked. Yep. Hi, Vance, you there? Maybe. Maybe not. Okay, Vance, I'll ask your question. If somehow it starts working, you can interrupt me. So Vance was asking, what do you see as the optimal staff investment, numbers, and talent to support this ecosystem?
Great question, and that's something I think we're trying to work through right now, because we're kind of at this point where we've built a certain number of integrations, and we recognize that it's not infinitely scalable with the people that we have right now, and so we're taking a close look at this and trying to figure out how many more people we need. But we're going to start small and ask for an additional individual to help support this. And then I think it's kind of iterative from there. So the question to the campus is, how much value do you see in this, and how much more do you want us to put in towards integrating this information together? But at the very minimum, it would be really nice to have one more technical person working on it, and to be honest, someone working a little bit more maybe on the outreach and engagement part of it. We have a need there as well. So maybe that's two. So immediately, it would be nice to have two people, and then kind of scale from there as the need and